Good Monday morning to everybody. Welcome to Senate Education Committee. A little early for some of us today, especially some of us that are retired. I'm not used to getting up this early, so I'll just admit it up front. But anyway, want to try and get through 4 bills. We got a good start, I guess, last week on House Bill 36, Hathaway Scholarship Amendments. And before we do that, let's take a roll real quick.
Madam Chairman, for Senate Education, February 24th, 2025, Senator Brennan,
Excused?
Senator Olson,
Excused?
Senator Rothfuss, Senator Scott, Chairwoman Schuler.
Thank you so much.
You have a quorum.
All right, well, we have the good representative from Casper here today to talk to us about the Hathaway Scholarship Amendments. And maybe you can just do a little high level since I was gone presenting some bills. And that'd be great. Perfect, thank you.
And over the weekend, so really appreciate the amendments bigger than Bill. Good morning.
Good morning.
Madam Chairman and committee, and thanks again for carrying this little bill over. And thanks. Really, the bill was brought to me by a constituent as a kid in an electrician's program, Central Wyoming College, and the program takes, it's a 4-year program and 1 class per semester, but it's under 6 hours, and it's a graded class, but then they're required to do on-the-job training. So you go to class and then you go to work with a master electrician, and you do that for 4 years, take a different class each semester. So the Hathaway Scholarship awards part-time students, but the baseline is 6 hours. And so that's where the issue is really at. And so brought the little bill, the department brought up the issue really of there's other degree programs that it wasn't clearly stated in this bill that are non-graded and are done really, most of them in 6, 8, 9 months. And so that wasn't the intent of the bill. The intent is really these graded on-the-job training programs that last perhaps longer than the 2-year scholarship and take fewer hours, that stretch. It basically stretches out longer. So we want to give the department and the Community College Commission ability to kind of look at this and write rules. So that's the bill, Madam Chairman. And then so the department wanted some more clarification on this. So we went to our staff, contacted the Department of Education, worked on the language we think is the right, will work for this. And so the first part is some deletion and conforming language. And then over on page 2, goes into the definition of satisfactory academic progress, adds to that. And then on line 26 on page 2 are really just the repeat language, Hathaway Opportunity, Performance, Honor Scholarship. That repeats through page 2 and 3. And then over on page 4, the Hathaway Provisional Opportunity, which was a new scholarship we added after. And so you can read the new language on there. Members, is that for students enrolled in the program, Wyoming Community College requires on-the-job training and less than 6 credit hours per semester to receive a certificate. And so the satisfactory academic progress means completing all semester hours a student is enrolled in each semester and meeting the hourly on-the-job training requirements, and meeting such other criteria as established by the community college to ensure the student earns the certificate in a timely manner. So I hope that this is the fix. I think working with staff over the weekend, I think it is. So stand for any questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Questions for Representative Harshman? Senator Scott?
Chairman, I've got a question, it's probably more for the State Department of Education on how much the scholarship amount is going to be.
Do you have any idea on that, Representative?
I couldn't quite hear.
How much, you want to repeat that? Get a little closer there, Senator Scott.
We'll have a question on, and I think it's probably for the State Department, on how much the scholarship is going to be each semester.
Go ahead, Representative.
Madam Chair, and so the language in here divides it just like it does for the part-time student, divides through by 12 is the denominator. So 6/12 is halftime, and so, and as I got online and looked at Central Wyoming's, one semester I think is a 5-hour class, one is a 4-hour class, one is a 2 or a 3, so it varies throughout that 4 years, so those would all be divisions of 12.
Yeah, go ahead.
Madam Chairman, where is that in the amendment?
It's on page 2.
I
Senator.
think
Yeah, at the very bottom.
each, yeah,
It's on line 18 and then line 47 looks to me.
Amount provided,
Yeah.
it's fraction, okay.
Yes.
Okay, so that's where it is.
Okay, Senator Rothfuss.
Following up on that, one of my concerns with the prior language where we have part-time students, and I'll ask you if it's doing the same thing. Is this burning a full semester of eligibility of Hathaway for 3 credits worth of Hathaway payment or 6 credits worth of Hathaway payment? I think it is. Is that accurate?
Representative?
Madam Chairman, I think that this gives the commission and the department an opportunity to kind of work on that through rules. I think it does, because if it's a provisional, it's only a 2-year scholarship, and you have to, so I think that's the intent. I think through rules, they can work on that.
Madam Chairman, Representative,
Follow-up?
I don't think it does, but it solves the problem you want to solve, but it doesn't solve that other problem,
But
I
I
don't
think-
think. But I'll check with the
Yeah,
department.
go ahead.
Madam
Representative.
Chair and Senator, and I think your idea or issue is probably another issue for
Yeah.
all Hathaway scholarships. And particularly, I think students who want to finish in 3 years,
Yeah.
want to move faster and take summer classes and do all that. And I think that would be a wonderful interim topic, I think, for the
Agreed.
Joint Education Committee.
Thank you.
Yeah, Representative Harshman, I was just going to ask you if you turned that in for an interim topic, because I think that's a good one. We can always add it to our list
Yeah.
of many. Yeah, we'll add it. Yeah. Other questions for the good representative? So I did look at the amendment. Like you said, it's quite lengthy compared to the bill, but if it gets us where we need to go, which I didn't, having not been here the day you went over this, I had no idea, because I had read through the bill and thought it looked good, but after kind of, I'm one of those that I have to highlight it in so I can see, and it looks to me like it gets us where we need to be, so. If there's no other questions, I guess we can turn you loose and maybe stick around if you can. I don't know if you have other bills you're working on the, nope, okay. There might be some
Pretty
questions from the
light load this
public.
session,
Okay.
Madam Chair, and I really appreciate the committee carrying it over. Thank you.
You betcha. Okay, let's go ahead and open this up for the public. Anybody would like to? Oh, yeah. I was looking. I didn't see her again, so I was going to say there's nobody here from the Department of Ed. Got to quit hiding behind that pillar.
Good
Welcome.
morning. Sorry, it was hiding behind the pillar.
Sorry, I didn't see
Absolutely.
you.
Wanda Maloney with the Wyoming Department of Education. I'm here with Brad Barker. Brad Barker also supports us with the Hathaway Scholarship implementation. I just wanted to clarify a little bit from last week that the superintendent does support career and technical education. She does support the intent of this bill, but as you know, last week we had some questions just about the implementation and the fact that it was non-credit bearing. But I think we've gotten some more clarity around that. So I think we'll stand for additional questions that you might have as we work through this amendment.
Questions? Yes, go ahead, Senator.
I'll just follow up with the same question if you know the answer to it. I know that currently for part-time students, if you've got 6 credit hours and you use the division where you end up with 50% of your Hathaway, that you're burning a semester effectively of your Hathaway eligibility, and you're only getting about half of the credit. Is there any flexibility in rulemaking to accommodate that for this legislation? I don't think there is, because I think we have that problem already in statute.
Mr. Barker or Ms. Maloney, whichever one would like to answer that. Have at it.
Madam Chair, Senator Rothfuss, there is not room in the rules to make that adjustment.
Yeah, I thought that was explicit in law, so that is something we have to take care of maybe in the interim.
Okay. Senator Scott,
I'm sorry, I could not hear his answer.
could you repeat that, Mr. Barker?
Madam Chair, Senator Scott, it is not, there's no flexibility in the rules.
Yeah, it's explicit discussion.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. Other questions for the Department of Ed? Okay. Are you pretty comfortable with the amendment? I assume you guys had a chance to look at it, and
Just briefly this morning, we looked it over.
you don't see any issues at all that? It's a big amendment, so I
It is a big
understand if you-
amendment. I don't know that we can fully answer that without a little more
Sure,
time to
sure.
comprehend. I would say also that the superintendent would entertain this as an interim topic so that we could further study this and work with the community colleges to make sure that we're supporting.
Okay. All right, if there's no other questions, we'll now go ahead and open it up for the public. So anyone that would like to come forward and testify on House Bill 36 Hathaway Scholarship Amendments, please come forward. Oh, there we go. Welcome. Please introduce yourself, even though we might know you.
Hi, good morning.
Hi.
Members of the Senate Education Committee, I'm Erin Taylor. I represent the Wyoming Association of Community College Trustees. We offered our support for this in the House, and, you know, conceptually, I think it's something that's a really neat idea, and how can we get at that population of students who are, you know, working in this space. If we need to work on it further, we're happy to be a part of that, and I know my colleagues at the commission definitely share that as well. So with me today, though, I do have Dr. Lisa Watson, president of Northwest College, and she might be able to offer some insight into how.
Hi, introduce yourself, please.
I'm Lisa Watson. I'm the president at Northwest College in Powell, Wyoming. It's a pleasure to be here this morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I just wanted to add a couple of quick things about this amendment through the lens of a college and also, obviously, our students. Our college provides non-credit CDL training. We also offer electrical apprenticeship. We do a variety of other certificate options for students, and many of those are non-credit based. I believe and agree, obviously with Senator Rothfuss, that the rules would definitely need to be worked on, and we would, as a college system, also need to work closely with WDE to make sure that we could manage what a certificate could look like. But I have asked, and I think an interim topic would be an exceptional place for that, for more data from the colleges in terms of the age group of the students that are taking some of those non-credit programs. I know, for instance, this summer, we were working on a project in one of our res halls. There was an electrical company there working. One of them was one of the electrical people there, the workers, was a student of ours. He was also doing the electrical apprenticeship program on the side, so it was an interesting combination in his case. Many of our CDL students, though, are in and they're out, and they're very focused on what they are trying to get done in a short period of time, as mentioned earlier. But some of our students are also in a 2-year program who are seeking a CDL, and obviously we just put a 4-credit program in place that could serve that and would not negatively affect the Hathaway. So I think there is a mix there, and there's an opportunity. We should certainly discuss it further. I'd stand for any questions.
Questions for Ms. Watson? Yes, go ahead, Senator Scott.
It strikes me that we're talking about some of the same things that the Wyoming's Tomorrow is trying to reach, but that's not really effective at reaching a lot of students right now. Is that?
Madam Chair, Senator Scott, I think my perspective would be that Wyoming's Tomorrow is not limited with an age and a group of students. It's open primarily to what we would consider adult learners, which obviously our students, all students would fall into that. But we do often think about the concept between a traditional age younger student and a non-traditional older student, and that's Wyoming's Tomorrow. The Hathaway is obviously geared for that, 18 to 22-year-old, 4 years out of school, and we're trying to grab them and put them into a program and let the Hathaway support them in their studies.
Other questions for Ms. Watson? Yeah, Senator Rothfuss.
Madam Chairman, I was just going to note that the Wyoming Tomorrow Task Force, when we worked on the Wyoming Tomorrow Scholarship, actually had a piece of legislation to address just this as well that never ended up getting introduced. And it's something that we could look at during the interim, where we adjust the way that our scholars are able to access their funds. So if they want to do a 2-year program, and let's say they're on an opportunity scholarship, they could just utilize all their funds in a 2-year period for a CDL or something along those lines. we might want to revisit that again. I think it solves a lot of what we're looking at here, but we'd have to rework that legislation. It's been several years since it was drafted.
Ms. Watson, have you had a chance to look at the amendment, or Ms. Taylor, either one?
No, I'm sorry, I haven't.
Have you had a chance to look at this amendment, proposed amendment? at
Madam
all?
Chair, no, I have not.
Oh, okay.
I've seen
I
the
just-
most recent ones, I think, from maybe a couple days ago, but, yeah.
Okay, thanks. I just was gonna see where you guys were at on it, if you felt comfortable with it as is, and if you haven't seen it, no worries. Any other questions? Okay, thanks so much for your testimony. Nice to have you here.
Thank you.
Anyone else would like to testify on House Bill 36, the Hathaway Scholarship Amendments? Anyone else in the room? No one online on this one?
No, Madam Chairman.
Okay, all right. Well, with that, we'll go ahead and close public testimony. What would you like to do with this bill? Move the bill. Move the bill. It's been moved by the good Senator Rothfuss. Any discussion on the amendments?
Yeah, I'd move
Other
the amendments.
Okay,
And Madam Chairman, I did just kind of line it in. It looks like it does what it needs to do.
Yeah.
The only problem with it really is that same problem the statute has, so we can't fix that here.
Yeah.
So I think it achieves the objective.
no, I did the same thing. It's the only way with an amendment this size that I can understand it, so. Any other amendments or any discussion?
Let's deal with this amendment.
Okay. All those in favor of this amendment, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No? Okay, that amendment is passed. Any other amendments?
Madam Chairman,
Yes, Senator Scott.
comment on the bill. I'm a little nervous that this bill may have unintended consequences and is represented to us that it's likely to affect 10 to 15 students a year. I'm a little suspicious that having it here may increase the numbers, and we've got the problem of, does the scholarship use up the too much of the authorization time? I think it may be best to pass it and fix any problems that come, and I suspect there may be some. But Madam Chairman, it does make me frankly a little nervous.
Other discussion? Senator Rothfuss?
I would just kind of go along with Senator Scott's thoughts there and say that, you know, that this is even further reason why we probably need to work on this during the interim and get some of these challenges that are a part of the Hathaway system that this brings forward and try and fix them up. This achieves the objective, in my view, that Representative Harshman was concerned with, but we just have an inelegant approach within the Hathaway to part-time student use of the Hathaway. So, yeah, I support the bill, but I do think we need to go back into statute and clean up the whole concept.
And Madam Chairman?
Yes, go ahead, Senator Scott.
I think if we wind up with more students than we expect out of this, what it really is going to underline is we need to do something about the size of the Hathaway endowment. Because we're gradually eroding it to the point it isn't going to do what it did when we first put it in.
You're exactly right. Yeah, I would agree with you. Senator Bennon, you came late, so you probably don't have any discussion. Do you? Let's vote.
Let's vote.
Yeah, I thought that's what you were going to ask. Question has been called. Let's go ahead and take roll.
Madam Chairman, on House Bill 36, Hathaway Scholarship Amendments do pass as amended. Senator Brennan?
Aye.
Senator Olson is excused. Senator Rothfuss?
Aye.
Senator Scott?
Aye.
Chairwoman Schuler?
Aye.
4 aye, 1 excused.
Okay, that bill is passed. Anyone that would like to take us up on the floor? Senator Rothfuss?
I can do it.
Thank you, Representative. Yep, appreciate it. All right, that'd be great. All right, knocked that out pretty fast. Our next bill for consideration is House Bill 20, K through 12 School Facility Leasing. This was sponsored by the Select Committee on School Facilities. And I thought maybe one of the folks from the Select Committee would be here. I'll let you. I saw good Senator Landon, and I thought he was on the way down here to present, but didn't get a chance to ask him for sure, so feel free then.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So this legislation simply goes into some details of the lease payment agreements for our charter schools, K-12 facilities. So you see that the changes actually begin on page 3. Any payment made by the department pursuant to the paragraph for a leased building or facility. And this actually governs all leased facilities, but most of the leased facilities happen to be charter schools. Shall be equal to the lesser of the total amount of the total lease agreement or the average cost per square foot to lease buildings or facilities comparable to those appropriate for public K-12 education multiplied by the allowable square feet. So this goes into an allowable square footage approach, which is what we do for schools, as opposed to the total square footage. And the concept there is to have some equity or parity between how we manage it for, manage the cost for a leased facility so that you wouldn't lease a gigantic facility for a small number of students. And then the way the language previously mentioned it, you would pay the appropriate market rate for a giant school that was in statute, so that's what would be paid. And this says, no, it's going to be based on an allowable square footage so that you have to right-size the charter school building square footage that's going to be leased so that it's similar to the students. And that allowable square footage is a calculation that's based on what is your ADM? And then we've actually got that bill that's going through legislation right now. It's 115%. It could go to 135% if that legislation passes. That's it.
Okay, questions? Yes, Senator Scott?
Madam Chairman, so suppose you've got a charter school, it's found a facility that is, say, 40% or 25% or something larger than what it needs, but it's the available facility. They would still be able to lease it, but they might have to pay some of the lease fee out of their operating costs as opposed to being reimbursed by the state. Is that the?
Madam Chairman, Senator Scott, that is correct. They could certainly still lease it. They could lease a portion of it, but the amount of money that they would have available would be capped based on the allowable square footage instead of simply the size. And so previously, it really was just dependent on hardwired into statute. You look at the number of square feet, and then you look at the market cost of a square foot so that it's the fair market value. You multiply those two, and that was the lease amount. It didn't care how many students were in the building.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then just to follow up, Senator Office, I don't know if you know the answer to this or not, but if, let's say they do end up renting a building that's larger than what they need, they can use their major maintenance money, but they can't use more than what is actually allowed for that. Is that right, that square footage?
So leased square footage would not generate major maintenance money.
Okay.
That's part of the way we run leases. We require that the major maintenance be a part of the lease.
And also, just to follow up, the district, they can request a review of the amount that can be expended by the state facilities folks if they don't agree with that. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. All right. Any other questions on this bill? Okay. Well, with that, we'll go ahead and open up public testimony. Anyone that'd like to testify? Probably the Department of Ed, maybe. I don't know. I can see one of them here. So House Bill 20, K through 12, school facility leasing. Interested in? No? Okay. Anyone else in the room that would like to testify on this bill? Got a quiet group today. That's okay. It's Monday. I understand. Well, if there's no public testimony, we'll close that. And discussion on the bill?
Move the bill.
Yeah, thank you. Yep. Question's been called. I don't know of any of this. It's a pretty simple bill. But we can't if we say that out loud. If you say it's a quick, simple bill, you know what'll happen. It'll get bogged down in the mud, so. All right, I believe we're ready to take roll.
Absolutely, Madam Chairman. On House Bill 20, K-12 school facility leasing, do pass. Senator Brennan?
Aye.
Senator Olson is excused. Senator Rothfuss? Aye. Senator Scott?
Aye.
Chairwoman Schuler?
Aye.
4 aye, 1 excused.
Okay, and we'll just let, maybe the good Senator Landon can carry this one since he's on school facilities.
Sure.
All right, sounds good.
And if he's not ready for it.
Then you'll do it? Okay, appreciate that. All right, the next bill for our consideration, we're knocking them out today. Yee. House Bill 94, Charter School Authorization Amendments. I was just going to say, is Representative Andrew in the room? I hadn't seen you yet, but were you hiding behind a pillar? Or you just popped in? Anyway, welcome. Introduce yourself and tell us what you want us to know about this bill.
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman. Today I bring you House Bill 94, and I'm excited to bring a bill that is much more simple to explain than anything I have brought previously to this committee. Sorry. What this bill does is it removes the cap on the amount of charter schools that the state authorizing board can authorize. Currently, we have an entire infrastructure for authorizing charter schools, but we have no more charter schools that we can authorize in law. The current cap doesn't lift until 2028. So what this bill does is just accelerate that, and it lifts it now. I think that one thing to consider is that some have said that this means unlimited charter schools, but I don't believe that is what it means, because it is still established in law that starting a charter school is a very rigorous process. And so they have to bring charter schools that are able to prove to the board that they are set up to be successful. In other states around us, like Colorado, Idaho, New Mexico, where they have no or extremely high caps, over the past, couple decades that they've had those in those states, the average number of charter schools per year was somewhere between 2 and 3 per year. And those states have significantly larger populations than we do, obviously. So I think this is probably the most reasonable solution, not to have to play with the numbers, and let our charter school authorizing board do the work that they're set up to do. Thank you.
Okay. Questions for Representative Andrew? I have just a couple. Some of the other states that you looked at where they're authorizing a couple a year, 2 or 3. Would that be a better way to go than just taking the lid off and saying, let's just throw out there as many as we want? Or do you just kind of anticipate that we would only have maybe 1 or 2 per year? Or can you look into your crystal ball and think about that?
Madam Chairwoman, I think it's important to keep open the flexibility, especially since we have had a long period of time where it's been very hard to open charter schools in Wyoming. I think, the authorizing board has only the capacity to approve so many. It's work for them. So I think there are natural limits that we should let work rather than specifically prescribing how many can open, but I'm just presenting evidence that I don't think there's a good chance of this totally running away from us.
And just as a follow-up to that, do you have any idea how long it takes once an application's been made for the authorizing board to make that happen? Month-wise or year-wise?
I think I would like to direct those questions to Ms. Klein. I think she's much more well-equipped to authorize or to answer those specific questions on the inner workings of charter schools than I am.
Okay. Other questions for Representative Andrew? Okay. Well, I had a couple more, but maybe I'll wait and offer them to the State Department or Ms. Klein, so. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Appreciate your testimony. All right, we'll open it up for the Department of Ed. Nobody's hiding behind the pillars on this one. Welcome, Superintendent. Please introduce yourself, even though we know who you are.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Megan Dagenfelder, State Superintendent of Public Instruction. Pretty simple bill, and I'll keep my comments very brief. I am in favor of this bill. Arbitrary caps or numbers, I just don't fundamentally think are a good place in policy, and so I think that this allows the charter board, the authorizing board, to be able to have that flexibility. To the last conversation that was just occurring with the bringer of the bill, I think that is the safeguard, is the authorizing board. And so, but putting a number on that, you could have the best charter school in the entire world, that's that third one, and if we've limited it to 2 a year, do we really want to do that? And so I think letting them and their expertise be able to sort out what charter schools are going to perform well in the state. Would also just add that from start to finish, an example timeline of application to completion would be about 18 months. And so, do I see this being a whole huge floodgate, 10 schools, within 6 months? No, I don't. But I also think that that's the role of the authorizing board to be able to determine what schools meet muster and which may not.
Questions for the superintendent? Yes, Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So new charter schools, we know that they end up costing, several $100,000 to millions of dollars additional funding, as well as the leasing of the space. It's my understanding that the statewide authorizing board doesn't have any fiscal restraints on them, that that's not their mission. They're not supposed to figure out, does this save the state money or cost the state money? They're supposed to analyze it simply based on, is this a charter school that meets all of the criteria for being an effective school? So basically, does it check the boxes of statute? So at that point, who constrains the budget? Because previously, the budget was constrained by us putting caps on it, and that was the discussion. That was actually part of the compromise that moved the bill forward, was the idea that the legislature would be, to some degree, in charge of the number of new schools that was going forward. This removes that entirely, so it seems that at that point, the legislature is then at the whim and mercy of the state authorizing board, which has no requirements for constraints on the fiscal side of things. How is that responsible?
Superintendent?
Madam Chairman, Senator, that's correct about the authorizing board. I don't think that we know for sure the fiscal impact that the charters are going to have on the margin. And I think that that's important. I don't think that it's just adding duplicative. Now, will it possibly have an increased cost? We don't know for sure. And so I think that that's important, that that will be at the margin, not just duplicating cost of what would be within a student within a district and then into the charter school. And so I think that remains to be seen, and think that we have to continue to analyze as we move forward.
Yes, go ahead, follow up.
Well, if it remains to be seen, then we should get the data first. It would be reasonable, where we've got 4 charter schools that are currently available for us to contemplate. But at the same time, I don't know that even we have to wait for data, because we have a funding model. And the funding model produces specific fund values for a new school. And so we can just do the math. It doesn't take any see what happens. It literally is just an exercise in plugging in new schools into the funding model and seeing that a school develops school level resources. That means a principal, that means a secretarial, that means 3 minimum teachers, that means groundskeepers, that means routine maintenance, assuming that it's a facility of the district, or it means the lease payment, which we can see what those lease payments are based on market rate. So we know without question that it ends up running, a base school. As soon as you open a school, it's going to cost roughly $1 million more than not having that school, but having those entities in the district at that time. So I guess I don't understand what we need to wait for. What don't we understand?
Superintendent?
Madam Chairman, Senator, I think what the impact will then be to our current districts, right? We have a 3-year rolling ADM. And so I suppose we could, estimate that based on what that's going to be in future years. But I think that will be a reduced cost as well when the 3-year ADM passes and they no longer have those students within the factor of their funding model. But I think the greater question here is really just about a policy decision of favorability of opening the doors for school choice in this way, and knowing that, will we have increased costs at the margin? Yes. But for me, it's really more about giving those opportunities to have not an arbitrary number, but really letting the choice dictate itself within the community. And so that's where I just fundamentally fall on this.
Yes, go ahead, follow up, sure.
And again, with the 3-year rolling ADM, I mean, that actually increases the cost for those 3 years, because that means a double payment for that period of time. So what I was talking about was the long-term additional cost where you're adding the building. The 3 years is actually, you double pay the first year, and then you phase it in over those years. But the concern I have is the idea that we're turning over fiscal responsibility and decision-making for how many schools, new schools will be built, where we're obligated, 100% obligated as the legislature to pay those to an appointed board. So you, basically, it's the legislature abrogating its authority over the budget in any way to an appointed board. And I guess I'm understanding how that's, or failing to understand how that's a fiscally conservative approach to it, even if you support school choice, the idea that we would turn over budget increases. So can you provide a little context?
Sure.
Superintendent?
Madam Chairman, Senator, I think that that's fair. I would also say that the legislature meets annually, and then we continue to look at this and fine tune it. I would say too that, we have a constitutional obligation to fund as the point that you're making, right? And so that's part of it. And so for me, I just, at the end of the day, it's the value of school choice is the most important thing for me here. I think that we continue to look at what that cost is. We continue to do recalibration, all of those processes, but it's a fair comment.
Okay. Other questions for the superintendent? I just have one. Do you have any idea, just, or maybe you haven't looked into your crystal ball, what are we looking at here in terms of how many folks might want to expand into the charter school area? You may not have heard, but if you have any idea around the state, that would be helpful.
Madam Chairman, I don't, right? I don't have that crystal ball of what that would be. So it's hard to tell at this point. But for me, again, that uncertainty outweighs, the arbitrary number that we put into place.
Okay. Any other questions for the superintendent? Okay. Thank you very much for your testimony. All right. Anyone else from the public that would like to testify on this bill? Welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Madam Chairman, members of the committee, Tate Mullen, Government Relations Director for the Wyoming Education Association. I wasn't planning on testifying, but there were a couple of questions that were brought up I'd like to provide some information on. I do want to come back to the idea of why we have undertaken this. This has been a number of years that we've been in this transition, the changing of the authorizer, and then the creation of the Charter School Authorization Board. When we undertook that, aside from understanding the cost, this was a discussion that was rooted in what we've continued to hear is competition for our local school districts. We want this school choice provides competition, benefits those local school districts. The idea was that the legislature was going to undertake determining whether that assertion played out, whether that was true or not. We haven't done that. We've seen some of the test scores from some of the charter schools, and some of those haven't done very well, but we haven't actually done an analysis on does that competition actually provide a better education system in our public education. As for the cost, again, I do want to reiterate this. This is something that we had brought up numerous times. The last time that the last three charter schools were authorized, we also raised the concern that this does increase overall cost. It is the single largest cost escalator for the model, and I believe that came in at roughly $14.5 million. So there is a cost to it, and it's not just one time. It will be ongoing. And that's something that, to Senator Rothfuss's point, the state legislature then, because that is in the model, we are obligated to fully fund. So with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Questions for Mr. Mullen? Okay, thank you. Anyone else would like to testify on this bill? Please come forward. Welcome, please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brian Farmer, Wyoming School Boards Association. Madam Chairman, I'm speaking in opposition to the bill, really just asking the legislature to do what the 67th Wyoming legislature suggested we do, which is let's take a look at it. Let's study charter schools. So we opened a door and said that we were going to take a look at it. So Madam Chairman, when you look at your bill here and when you look at what the 67th did, we're not amending the green books. This is session law. This is just directive of kind of steps forward. What's our path forward look like? This is not a forever limitation. And Madam Chairman, I do really want to push back on the notion that there is a cap on charter schools, because charter schools are free today to apply to a school district. We have a number of charter schools that have been authorized by Wyoming school districts. And Madam Chairman, those charter schools are functioning at very high levels. We're seeing very good successes from those charter schools. But Madam Chairman, we just have not had the benefit of time yet to look at what's happening with our newly state authorized charters. And so it's important that we take a look at things like student performance. How are they doing? Are there issues with governance? We've talked about the issue of LEA. Who's going to be the LEA? How does that impact funding? And so we're starting to identify those things. And Madam Chairman, I really hope that this is a topic that this committee chooses to take up in the interim, to look at things, to ask the critical questions. Madam Chairman, we've talked about this notion of a 49th district. Of a sort of centralized state entity that's going to look over things. But we're operating in sort of a hybrid now where the schools are authorized by an entity but have independent sort of functioning. So is that the best way, the best path forward? And so all the 67th did when they passed this legislation is, let's not close the door. Let's not prohibit them from existing. Let's just start off with a few to look at and see what the experience is like. And so, Madam Chairman, 2 of them opened their doors right away. And this year we've added another one, and there's another one that's still on its way. And so there are these entities that are out there, and we owe it to them to make sure that we're funding them correctly. And we owe it to them to make sure that we're providing them the adequate resources. We've talked about problems with facilities. Are we going to keep adding without addressing the facility issues that these new schools face? All this is in present session law is a pause that says, let's make sure that we deal with the problems before we just start moving forward beyond that. And so that's really all that's in place now. But if a school or if a charter is desirous of existing right now, they can apply to a school district, and the school district has full authority to authorize that charter. Madam Chairman, just one last comment, and I'll go back to what Senator Rothfuss was addressing. And I think that if you do look at what is the single largest increase in the school foundation, the largest escalator in the school foundation program account in the last couple of years has absolutely been charter schools. Like Senator Rothfuss said, that is a math issue. And so we just need to look at the math and say, why is that? Why are they costing more than what we thought? Why is it that they are resulting as the expenditure that they are? And are there adjustments that we need to make to provide the fair and equitable education to the kids in those schools? So this is not about anti-charter. This is not about limiting anything. This is about getting it right so that we do the best we can for those kids. Madam Chair, with that, I'd be open to questions.
Questions for Mr. Farmer? Senator Scott?
Madam Chairman, yes, I want to tell Mr. Farmer quite bluntly how I'm going to be, what I'm going to be saying in support of this bill, and allow him an opportunity, Madam Chairman, to respond. It seems to me that this bill in this session is a critical step because we are facing a problem with so many, probably close to 2/3 of the districts you represent failing better than 40% of the students on key metric of teaching them how to read adequately. We were criticized by the recalibration consultants, and you all have heard this before, on the previous recalibration, saying the kids that were testing basic and below basic on the YTOP test were not going to be able to succeed as adults in the modern coming high-tech economy. And That is true of many of the districts, but about 2/3 of them. Others are doing significantly better, Madam Chairman. So it's not uniform. And those districts have resisted, and your organization has resisted all efforts to reform and felt that what we're doing now is good enough, and I don't think it is. And I think that we need to give parents the opportunity to put together charter schools as an alternative to the current failing school system. And there's some cost details, yes, but the cost is much less important than giving those kids the adequate opportunity to learn to read that they are not getting from the current school systems. And this is a reform, the House Bill 199, scholarship program is another one, but that's going to stand a court test. This doesn't have that kind of problem. This has the parents can organize and develop a charter school and proceed to get out from under a failing school district. And I think, Madam Chairman, this is a very important bill this session because of that. And let's remove the obstacles so the parents can deal with the problem that we've got.
Mr. Farmer, would you like to reply to?
Oh, absolutely, Madam Chairman. I would love to take a look at the YTOP scores from last year. If we take a look at the YTOP scores from last year, we will see that the district authorized charters, by and large, are performing very, very well. We're finding that the state authorized charters are performing at the middle to the bottom of the state in YTOP scores. And so I think that it's very important to look at that. One of the charter schools, state authorized, is brand new and has not had the opportunity to show that. And so I agree that the data is important and we absolutely should look at that. And all I'm suggesting is let's take the time to look at that data to make sure that we're doing exactly what you said.
Follow up?
Madam Chairman.
Go ahead, Senator Scott.
Yes, I'm well aware of that data, particularly in the Casper situation. And what appears to be going on there is they're picking up the students that the school district has failed. And yes, it'll take them a while to get those students up to par, Madam Chairman, and that's what the testing results are showing.
Other questions for Mr. Farmer? Yes, go ahead, Senator Rothfuss.
So on the YTOP, this is actually going to Senator Scott's last point. On the YTOP, we evaluate proficiency, we evaluate growth, we evaluate equity, and then we evaluate some other things as well through our Accountability and Education Act. So each of those schools should have an equity and growth score associated with them, which then should be stellar in theory if those schools are performing well. Proficiency would be potentially lagging if the assertion is accurate that the other schools failed them. But growth and equity should be performing well if the schools are performing well. So I guess I'd ask that we look into that and see if they were meeting the growth and equity scores, which is available. Again, that's something that the Accountability and Education Act takes very seriously. And I don't know how those schools performed overall, but it's not just about their proficiency score through the Accountability Act. And we can look into that. We have that data to see even in the first year. And I don't know if Mr. Farmer knows off the top of his head how the growth and equity aspects were.
Mr. Farmer, any reply?
Madam Chair, I believe those are actually difficult because when you have a single point of data, you're not able to look at those kinds of measures. And so, again, all we're asking for is taking the time to look at the data to inform decisions.
Senator Scott, go ahead.
Chairman, I think I agree with Mr. Farmer in part on this one. It's going to take a couple of years for that. Yeah, data is meaningful. I think the first measure is going to be, do the parents keep the kids there?
Yeah, good points. All right. If there's no other questions, thank you, Mr. Farmer. Anyone else would like to testify on this bill, please come forward. Welcome, please introduce yourself for the record.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Chase Christensen, Superintendent Sheridan 3. Just wanted to talk real quick. Districts do have, as Mr. Farmer pointed out, the opportunity to approve charters at this point. And when a district does that within the Wyoming Accountability and Education Act, the district is taking on the responsibility for those students or choosing to continue to have the responsibility for those students. And our scores are reported at the school level, but they're also reported at the district level. And when the state chooses to open a charter, who is going to be taking on the accountability for that data? And I worry at this point that we're going to be opening charters after charters after charters, and we're going to see poor to middling results. And to Senator Scott's point, we may be taking on some of the students that need the most in terms of intervention. Those students also need the most in terms of dollars. So we're going to be opening up schools that are going to be expensive. They're going to be performing poorly. And then right now, if a charter school is performing poorly, it's really at a district's discretion as to whether or not to continue to have that school operate. If we've got schools that are underperforming in the future that were opened by a state authorizing board, who's going to be reviewing that data and choosing whether or not that school is performing well enough to continue to exist? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Questions for Mr. Christensen?
Madam Chairman,
Yes, go ahead, Senator Scott.
what's the current enrollment in your district?
Got 83 students, sir.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you for your testimony. Appreciate it. Anyone else would like to testify, please come forward. Welcome, please introduce yourself for the record.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Jeff Doherty. I'm here on behalf of the Alpine Charter School today. Some of you remember me from last year when I was asking this very body to approve an exception to the charter school cap, which this body did. Senator Scott made the motion on that one. We're so grateful for you doing that. Madam Chairman, I would tell you that we were the first, well, actually our application was second, but the first to be approved by the Wyoming Charter School Authorizing Board. And I want to tell you, if your fear is a run on the bank in charter school applications, let me take a moment to share how arduous and difficult this journey was. And of course, we had the added step of having to come through and add an additional charter slot for us. But for the fact that we were blessed with a community who had been blessed financially in their lives to be able to support this effort, I think our effort took about $200,000 to get it to this point. And it's very technical. Our application is 400 or 500 pages. It's not an easy thing to do. So I would tell you that applying for a charter school is not for the faint of heart. I hear some testimony today about, what if these charter schools fail? And my response is, what if we succeed? The ESA that our charter application is relying on is APA. In their jurisdiction down in Utah, they've got 80% of kiddos at 80% mastery. If we're able to do that here, how amazing is that for Wyoming kiddos? Because not every student is benefited by the traditional K-12 education. They're just not. And we need to find the right fit for the student and for the parents. I'm trying to not be repetitive of other comments that have previously been made. But one thing I would also point out is we did have the opportunity to go through the local school district up there, and that's a fantastic school district. Quite frankly, one of the highest performing school districts in the state up there in Lincoln County. And ultimately, we felt like our odds were much better if we went through the state authorizing board process. Ultimately, some of you may not know that the local school district actually provided a letter of support to the Charter School Authorizing Board in support of our application. That district has been incredibly supportive of everything that we've tried to do. One question I wanted to respond to with regard to the run on education, for us, we don't survive if we don't thrive, meaning parents will not send their kiddos to our school if we're not producing value for those kiddos. So I think because you have a fixed number of students within a community, if you're not producing results, parents won't send their kiddos to you, and the charter school will not persist. Alternatively, I think if we are successful, which I'm confident we will be, I think it'll also cause even a high-performing district like Lincoln County to innovate further if we're able to produce the results in Wyoming that they've been able to produce in Utah, Madam Chair. I would tell you in a separate conversation, we do need to make sure that our authorizing board is properly resourced, because right now they are struggling with resources. But Madam Chair, just in the interest of time, and there are probably people online, I'm going to stop and happy to answer any questions that the body may have.
Questions for Mr. Daughtry? Yes, go ahead, Senator Elphis.
So we did have a conversation last year about contemplating the district authorized charter school, and you provided a little bit of context, but I guess I still don't understand if the district was fairly supportive, why your charter school didn't just go through a district authorized charter school process.
Mr. Daughtry?
Madam Chair, Senator Rothfuss, that's a great question, and ultimately, I told you that's a very high-performing district, but I think initially they, and I don't want to speak for that district, you should probably pose that question directly to them, but traditional school districts are worried about ADM. And I'm not saying that was the motivation for Lincoln County, but every student that we are able to bring into our system is, through that 3-year rolling average, eventually going to transition out. But I think what ultimately was comforting to that district is one of the fastest growing in the state. So even a student that transitions into the APA system, I think is going to be replaced with a new student who moves into that jurisdiction as a result of the innate growth that's occurring in that area. But just over the course of our application, Senator, we had additional time to speak with them and socialize them to our application and what it was that we were doing that was different from what the traditional K-12 up there is doing. And I think it ultimately resulted in them sending a letter of support. But I think mostly we were just concerned that they may not be supportive of our application because of the ADM.
Follow up? Oh, okay, any other questions? I just have one.
Sure.
Specifically, were the school that you are involved with, was it more an issue with busing, kids being so far away from Star Valley, the north end versus the south end, or did you have a specific goal in mind with the school? Was it, geared toward more hands-on trades, tech, that sort of thing? Or what was the real goal of why you decided to put one together up there?
Madam Chair, that's a great question, and there were multiple goals that played into the decision to bring forward an application. But it's my understanding that the community of Alpine is the only community of its size that lacks a school of any kind, traditional or charter. And so I think the next closest school is in Etna, Wyoming, which is, 7 or 10 miles away from Alpine. And so the goal was to have a walkable community. The school configuration that we've presently proposed is a K-8. Folks have asked us to consider a K-12. Right now, we're gonna walk before we run and start with that K-8 configuration. But yeah, busing, those kiddos are on a bus for a long time, regardless of what grade level they're at. They're bused to Etna, they're bused to Thane, because it's a K-3, 5, 6 configuration, and then they all get bused to Afton for the rest of their education after that. So the hope is by starting a K-8, at least we can try to serve kids in that community until at least the 8th grade. And that was meaningful to a lot of parents. I would say, Senator, or Madam Chair, that was the #1 motivation behind why a school in Alpine.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much for your
Thank you.
testimony. Anyone else in the room that would like to testify, please come forward.
Madam Chair and
Good morning.
Senators, I'm glad to be here today and specifically address the needs of the charter schools. Wyoming is far behind other states in terms of authorizing charter schools, and there is a great deal of research.
Excuse me? Oh, yeah, I bet you didn't. Yeah,
Senator
would you please
Scott,
introduce
I'm
yourself?
so
I usually
sorry.
remind everybody.
I feel
that
so
know her,
familiar
I-
with the members here. I'm Diane Galloway, and I am the headmaster of the new Cheyenne Classical Academy. And I'm a former principal in the state of Wyoming. And I can say that our experience opening this charter school has been quite arduous. It is a process that started almost 5 years ago with Bill McIlvaine and Nathan Winters, envisioning that this community needed an alternative to the regular public school. We're a different situation than Alpine or Chugwater, where they're filling a need. But we also have said we're going to become a Hillsdale member school that offers a different kind of curriculum. And people talk at length about a one test score on the YTOP, but we're offering something that's different. We'll reach that YTOP, and I can tell you we've looked at our scores and our kids have been behind, and we've got a long way to go to grow them forward. But our Hillsdale school values strong discipline in the school. We value the development of virtues, of citizenship, and we have a very, very rich curriculum. We are meeting a need, and we have to appeal to our parents who are highly involved, more involved than any parents I had previously in my schools, and they have an investment for their kids. And that's a difference that we can offer Wyoming, is that parents have a choice, and parents do hold us very accountable. There's no slack of dropping them off the front door. They want to be involved. They want their children to go to a school that is safe, that is well-disciplined, where the curriculum is highly rich in terms of our history, our reading scores are going to be up. We need a couple of years to prove that. We can't bring kids in from a public school and then suddenly score high on a YTOP. It's not going to happen. But the curriculums that we offer and the opportunities we provide, I do believe will be a change maker for other public schools. And I want them to come and say, what are you doing differently? Why are you getting the results that you're getting? How come your school's so well-disciplined? And that we share that. And you need these lighthouse schools in the state of Wyoming in order to affect a strong change. Thank you very much.
Questions for Ms. Galloway? I have just one, and I know you went out of state for a while. So is the process we have in place right now for, doing a charter school, is it similar to what you saw in other states, or is ours a little more arduous, or could you explain that? Just
Well, I
real
was
quickly?
in Texas. I was at the University of Texas Arlington preparing middle school teachers. And those charter schools are prolific in the state of Texas. The state of Nevada has only state-authorized charter schools. There are models out there. There's a lot to be learned. I know with the new executive director of the state authorizing board that there's a great deal of research that can be done about how these other states have done it. But we're so far behind other states. And I think it's so important for you representing citizens to say, this is worth the value. And frankly, I don't get more money than Cheyenne. I'm operating on thousands of dollars less than the Laramie One School District. So we're not any kind of a cash cow. And these are Wyoming students in the public school system that the state has agreed that we pay for their education. We're not a different group, or kids didn't suddenly come from nowhere costing the state more money.
Yes, go ahead, Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. How are you operating on thousands of dollars less? We should be funding you equally.
Ms. Galloway?
Could you repeat that question?
Yeah, you said you were operating on thousands of dollars less. That's just not how it works. How are you receiving less money?
I'm still learning how this system works, but we're going to be receiving ADM, and the local school district also gets other funds, local taxes, other kinds of resources. And I'm sorry that I can't speak to it right now today. I would come prepared to tell you that, but I know we're getting less money.
Madam Chairman?
Follow-up? Go ahead.
You're a state-authorized charter
Yes,
school,
sir.
correct? All right, yeah, please provide follow-up information on how you're receiving less money, because the model generates the same number of dollars for you as it does for every other student in the district based on the parameters of the school, and again, fully compensating for the lease. So I don't understand how that could be taking place. If you'd follow up, that would be appreciated.
Ms. Klein, did you have anything you wanted to add to that? Or do you want to just start anew? Oh, go ahead, Senator Scott. You want to ask a question?
I will point out that on some of the reimbursement things, special ed and transportation, you could very well have differences that are produced by those.
Okay.
Madam
Yes, go ahead,
Chairman?
Senator Rothfuss.
You can't, those are 100% reimbursed, so you can have a cash flow concern where you
Yeah,
don't
but
have the
you-
initial
but
cash flow.
You add up all the money you've got and the number of students, it will come out different because of those. It's an artifact, but
I mean, 100% reimbursement is outside the model, so the model funding is going to be equitable. And transportation and special education are 100% reimbursement, therefore they're totally equitable. So the implication, I'm concerned about the implication that we have anyone telling us that charter schools are being underfunded in the state of Wyoming relative to the rest of the model, because that's just not accurate. I think it's important to clarify the record. So I would appreciate the follow-up analysis on how that might be the case.
Okay, any other questions? Yes, go ahead, Senator Brennan.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think that what we're talking about is the central admin that we have hopefully fixed with legislation.
That could be it.
Is possible, but we can get clarification on that later on.
Senator Rothfuss?
Madam Chairman, for statewide, the statewide don't provide any district level resources. That's why I asked if it was a statewide authorized charter. So it shouldn't be the case.
Scalloway, is yours the state authorized or district authorized? It's state. Okay, yeah, good. Any other questions? Okay, thank you for your testimony. Okay, Ms. Klein, welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Carrie Klein, representing the Wyoming Public Charter Schools Association. I have some comments. Hopefully I can help answer some questions too that were raised today. Madam Chair, this legislative body over the last few years has taken some bold steps to create a path that ensures families in Wyoming have access to high-quality options when it comes to educating their children. We applaud your focus on continuing to make these options even stronger by considering bills like this one. Charter schools see ourselves as an integral part of the public charter school system. So just wanted to reiterate that. This board, the Wyoming Charter School Authorizing Board, was created to be the gatekeeper of authorizing high-quality applications and has the statutory authority to approve those that meet the standards of what we want our public charter schools to be. There's a wealth of knowledge and support that this board brings. They now have an executive director. They've made a lot of progress. They're growing and they're thriving. It seems reasonable to ask these board members to review and consider schools through the duties that have been laid out for them in statute. We really don't want to see their efforts stifled by not having the opportunity to even consider another application until March of 2029. Currently, they cannot look at another application until March of 2029. Oppressing the growth of charter schools through a moratorium, or really any number, seems arbitrary. The process set was thoughtful and should be in motion now. If this cap is not lifted, we face a risk of bottleneck if you have multiple schools waiting and suddenly they're faced with a number of applications all at once. Furthermore, we see it's a waste of expertise and talent that this board currently has. If they're not looking at applications until 2029, and I can walk through the timeline a little bit, that means there's not going to be another state-authorized charter school until school year 2030. That's another 5 years. And we know that districts continue to deny charter school applications. I do believe you got a letter from Christian Winger. He was unable to be here today. He's the CEO of the Prairie View, and he had some strong testimony on the House side about the challenges of working with the district and why they ultimately chose this process. So if you look at the timeline, just real quickly, from start to finish, we tell applicants to expect typically an 18-month process. So currently, the Department of Education collects applications from March 1 to March 31st. And then, starting in April, there's a statutory timeline that begins, starts with a 90-day period in which they have to have a determination made. There's a 60-day window in there where they have to have a public hearing. And then there's always the contract period after that, followed by, applicants really have to start submitting required data to the WDE on enrollment. They have to secure facilities, hire staff, enroll students, et cetera. So it's not something that's going to suddenly have overnight, 10 charter schools. This is a rigorous process. We feel it was defined that way on purpose, and we support that process. We want to make sure that all of the things that we're doing when we say you may open a charter school are done correctly and with students in mind. So we ask you to continue to make the existing policy stronger by removing this limitation on the ability of the board to do the job that they were tasked to do. When their hands are tied, parents really are not provided with these options. I will like, just to respond a little bit on the money, and we heard the superintendent say, this is a policy decision. At the end of the day, money for education belongs to parents and not systems. Do we fund the best schools, or are we funding districts? And I think we need to remember that local tax dollars and federal tax dollars, like Title I, do stay with districts. So again, I would just ask you to consider the funding of our students in this state. I was just going to say that you have passed some extraordinary legislation this session to address some inequities in the funding. And so we feel that charters are being equitably treated and on par with the funding at this point. So thank you for your work on that. Moving forward, we know, as with anything in the budget, we're going to have to look to make sure that we keep resourcing this policy decision, and we don't have any, well, I'll just say we appreciate the Education Committee in both chambers for recognizing this. We've submitted interim topic requests in collaboration with other groups to make sure that we're taking a careful look at all resources being appropriated as needed for this effort. We have no reason to believe, given the strong support of school choice, that this will be an issue. With that, Madam Chair, I'm happy to answer other questions if you have them. Again, thank you for the consideration of the bill, and we look forward to working. Oh, I did want to mention, Madam Chairwoman, we had some discussion with the department and with other entities. When you look at the bill language, it just conceptually, and this didn't come up today, but I know we can certainly work with partners on your committee. Right now, the language in the bill references beginning March 15th of 2025. And we feel that just looking at the timeline and the application process being in March, that conceptually, we would like this bill to be effective July 1 of this year. So that means that, it would be next March when this board would be looking at applications.
Questions for Ms. Klein? Yeah, I just have one. I know we're still in the infancy with our charter schools. Has the state charter authorizing board, have they ever denied someone? And if they did, why?
Madam Chair, they did deny an application, and I do believe the chairwoman of the authorizing board is online to testify. But I will just tell you, they were presented with 2 applications this last year, and they only had the capacity statutorily to approve 1. Okay. So they had to make a choice there.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair, I did want to point out, we've got data. If you look at, there's been a lot of comments or concerns, we're going to open this up and suddenly we're going to have a lot of charter schools. When you look at Wyoming's student population and you look at states around us who have had a state authorizing board for 20 years, and I did provide some information, Colorado, Idaho, Mississippi. Over the last 20 years, those states have seen an average of two charter schools open per year or be approved through their state authorizing board. And those states have much larger student populations than we do. So I don't think the fear that we're going to have dozens of charter schools will play out here in Wyoming. Of course, none of us has a crystal ball. If we did, it would make all of our process a lot easier. But I do believe you're going to see a very reasonable, again, it's a process that it's, even as Mr. Daugherty commented on, it's rigorous. It takes a lot of resources and effort and time. And so I think only the best are going to survive.
Other questions for Ms. Klein? Okay. Thank you so much for your testimony. Appreciate it. Anyone else would like to testify in the room? Okay, I know we have someone online, so go ahead and bring her in.
Absolutely, Madam Chairman. Ginny Bain-Teske is joining the room right now.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Please introduce yourself.
Ginny Bain-Teske. I am Chair of the Wyoming Charter School Authorizing Board. And if I can begin just by circling back on a couple of questions that were raised, just to put clarity around it. Once an application has been received and is deemed to be complete, which is merely a checklist, it has nothing to do with the quality of the application. It has to do with, is the information that was asked for provided? Then our board is required to go through the entire process with that application. To address something that Senator Scott was talking about, which is the, performance, the YTOP performance of these schools, there's a few things going on, and I think it's only appropriate that we make sure that we give these schools a little bit of time, because some of these schools don't even have the growth data on the students that they inherited from this. Some of it is because they're homeschooled students. Some of it is because they didn't get the data from the district that they left. So I think we need to make sure that we have the full array of data available as we're assessing the YTOP performance. And the third question is a question that Senator Rothfuss continues to ask, which is why don't the home districts want to support these or approve these charter schools? I'll just tell you, the main reason is because it's a lot of work. It takes a lot of time and it's a lot of work to approve it. And then it's a lot of work to get it up and running, as you've heard from some of the other folks that testified. And I guess I just want to thank you all for your support. As it's been mentioned, we took the first step by approval of the board and hiring of an executive director. We have submitted an interim topic for your consideration, which would help to clean up some of the confusion around charters and the statutes. We hope that as we move forward, we'll see your commitment during the budget session next year that this board and our work is important to all of us, particularly our students, and unique opportunities that charters provide. Exciting things are happening, and as I look at Prairie View, for example, roughly 40% of the students that are attending Prairie View were homeschooled students. So we are really, this isn't traditional K-12 versus charter schools. I think we are really providing opportunities to students that have not been part of our public school system up to this point. And at that, I'll stand for any questions. Thank you.
Questions for Ms. Bain-Teske? Yes, Senator Rothfuss.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Janine, thank you for providing testimony today. I was curious about the process. The suggestion was that the one charter school that was turned down, so to speak, was only turned down because we don't have another slot, right? We've capped at 4. And I'm curious about the process. You said you have to go through the entire process. Is there an obligation or expectation to approve any charter school that meets the standards, or are there some subjective criteria that the board uses to decide whether a charter school is going to be effective, or, you know, how would that decision, if we uncapped it, in other words, how would that decision be made? Would it be a checklist approach, or would it be subjective?
Ms. Dateski, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Rothfuss, I think it's subjective. I think we need to, I mean, it's both, actually. You do have to go through a checklist to make sure that all of the information is provided, that we feel that they do meet all of the criteria. But when the dust settles, the Charter School Authorizing Board is responsible for making sure that, ensuring the success of these schools. So we certainly don't want to approve schools that we don't believe will be successful. Candidly, and I am just one vote out of the 8 that sits on the board, I did not think the other applicant was really ready to move forward with their charter school application.
Yes, go ahead, follow up.
Thanks. And final question, Janine. I don't think you have any guidance, and I asked an earlier question about whether you have, as a board, any sensitivity to the cost differential. I don't think that's part of your instruction, and I just wanted to get your thoughts on it, if that's accurate, that you don't have a cost-based component of your analysis.
Madam Chair, Senator Rothfuss, I'm not sure exactly what you're asking, so I'll answer the question the best as I can. In a way, there is, because we want to make sure that there's that these schools are financially going to succeed as well. So we've got to make sure that some of that boxes within, the facility lease requirements and all of that. So there is a financial piece in a way, because we want to make sure they're going to succeed.
Any other follow-up?
No, thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you for your testimony. We appreciate it. All right.
Thank you.
Anyone else then between the room or online? Is that everybody, Ashley?
That is everybody online, Madam Chairman.
Okay. Well, with that, we'll go ahead and close public testimony then. What's your pleasure on this bill?
Move the bill.
It's been moved by Senator Brennan. Discussion.
Madam Chairman,
Yes,
question for
Senator
you.
Scott?
We're missing one committee member. Do you have a vote from him, or are we gonna hold the vote open until he can vote?
What do you think?
Madam Chairman, Senator Olson did leave an absentee vote for this
Okay,
bill.
I was just going to ask if he did. I didn't see one over here on his desk, so. All right, let's work the bill. Yes, go ahead. Any amendments or discussion?
I would propose that we would change our dates from March 15th to July 1. I believe I know where those are at, but I would also be open to moving this forward and making sure that we've got all of the dates correct for
Ashley,
LSO to look at.
You bet. Ashley, I believe that's on page 2, line
Yes.
16.
Madam Chairman, Senator Brennan and I have been in discussion with Tanya. And Tanya just asks that the committee move it conceptually, so she's able to make conforming amendments
Okay.
where needed.
Great.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I believe they'll be on page 2,
Oh, there's
lines
2.
1,
Yep, there's 2 places. You're right.
16. And that then on section 4, we would delete that and then put this act as effective July 1st, 2025.
Good. Okay.
I don't think there's anything else, but I am okay with LSO double checking our work.
Did you get all that, Ashley?
Yes, Madam Chairman.
Okay, great. Any other amendments?
Well, can we, I would
Oh,
move
yes, I
that
guess,
amendment.
I
and
guess we
could
better
we
vote on
it?
that first. Yeah, let's do vote on that. I'm jumping.
Thank you.
Hoops too quick today. All those in favor of Senator Brennan's motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? No? Okay, those amendments have passed. Any other amendments? I may have one, but I think if this bill moves forward, I'll probably just do it as a committee of the whole amendment. And I wanted to visit a little bit with the good representative a little bit before I offer that, just to kind of get his thoughts on it. Yes.
Madam Chairman, in my mind, it would be more responsible to increase the number without eliminating the cap. I don't think there's necessarily support on the committee for it. So Maybe we can talk more about that later, but I do think that there's justification based on what we see with it already being at the cap and us having 4 more years to continue to slowly expand. I do have concerns about us abrogating our authority and budget oversight to the state authorizing board, which is effectively what we're doing, where they determine what the budget implications are, and we don't have any say. We are obligated to pay, and so an expansion of schools could be of concern for that purpose. Obviously, the expansion of every individual school costs the school foundation program more, but if we have a cap, we've at least done some due diligence in saying, well, we have a sense of how much it would be. Removal of the cap, we've been advised that it would not take off and run wild, but again, we don't have oversight over it. And there's absolutely no way we'll shut down one of these schools once it opens up, right? The legislature is not going to come back and say, no, we've decided we spent too much, we're closing that school. That is an impossibility. So the idea that we fully remove the limit through the K paragraph is a big concern of mine. I would even be happy to support raising it to 10 by 2029, for example. And I don't know if that would be something that the sponsor would be interested in, or if the committee would be interested in, but that would allow for 6 new schools over the next 4 years, which should be in excess of demand, but definitely provides a more responsible approach to it. And I just wanted to throw that out there and explain that if we don't make that change, certainly no on the bill, because I think it's an irresponsible application of authority to a board that's out of control of the legislature. But wanted to at least provide some context for what I think is a reasonable middle ground.
Representative Andrew, any comment on that?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. While I would advocate for leaving the cap off, I think what I would request is to maybe have something like 5 a year until the original sunset date, to where it could be unlimited at that point. Perhaps, if that's needed to make people feel more comfortable with the bill, that could be a reasonable compromise.
Thank you. That was kind of where I was going down the same path as the good senator. I was thinking actually 3 per year for a certain amount of time, and then, but 10 by 2029 kind of does the same thing, I guess, so.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
And yeah, the cap is removed in 2029, so my 10 by 2029 was effectively the same thing, just allowing it all to take place, although 5 per year would be 20, where if this were raised to 10, that's actually 7 in that period of time. I guess my question is, do you anticipate 20 over the next few years? Because that does seem to be substantially higher than what anyone has discussed, and could result in a rather significant impact on the school foundation program.
Representative Andrew, any ideas on that?
Madam Chairwoman, that is a lot of schools. I do not foresee 20 schools. I think the important thing to consider, though, is that it is a per year cap. And I think that there are probably multiple entities around the state who have probably been waiting for this to happen. And you want to have a high enough cap to where we can consider, so the board can feel comfortable considering a decent number of schools and not having to solely deny those applications based on the cap. I think over that amount of time, 20 would be way more than we would probably foresee, but I think it just leaves enough flexibility each year to deal with whatever might come at us and not have it be an unreasonable amount either.
Are you interested in making a motion this time, or do you want to wait? Or do you want
I'm interested in supporting your motion, Madam Chair.
to? 3 per year or 2 per year? I have both down on my list, so. I'll make a motion that then on page 2, I would make that motion on line 3. They may authorize 3 per year, 3 charter schools per year until 2029. All those in favor, well, you want to discuss first? Yes, Senator Scott?
Madam Chairman, I don't think we need a cap. I think we need to keep the cap off because I think there are great needs out there for reform. And I think cap just slows that down. The big thing I know about in the finances is you've got to get working capital because so many of our things are done on a reimbursement basis. Beyond that, I think we need to have, at some point in the interim, a look at the finances in charter schools, because certainly when they first came to us, there was talk of the potential for a great deal of savings, and on the initial bill, we had to beat it up until to get enough to function. That occurred in the drafting process. I think we need to have a look at the finances to make sure we aren't getting a runaway. But the big cost in starting new ones is the working capital. And Madam Chairman, with the failures in the existing public school system, it bothers me that we're not getting enough charters, more than it bothers me it might cost a little more.
Other discussion on the amendment? I just, again, the issues with funding kind of concern me with, you know, the ESA bill we passed and some other things that we've done with charter schools. I'm a little nervous about funding, and I don't think that the gates are going to open either, quite frankly, but I just think this 3 per year, I thought about 2, but I think 3 per year until 2029 makes sense. I don't know that we'll have that many per year. After looking at some of the other states, you know, that are having 1 or 2 per year, I don't think that that's unreasonable, but let's go ahead and take a vote on that. All those in favor of that amendment, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed?
No.
Okay. I guess that does, let's see, 2 and 2 does not go through, does it? All right.
Pretty sure Jared voted aye.
Oh, you think he did? I don't think he heard my amendment, so.
Yeah, of course he didn't.
Any other amendments? Well, again, I may make, like I said, if this goes through, I may make that amendment on the floor or something similar, so. There's no other amendments, no other discussion. I'll just say ahead of time, I will probably vote yes to move this forward, but without amendments, I don't know that I can vote for it on the floor, but that's just me stating ahead of time what my thoughts are, so. Let's go ahead and take roll, Ashley.
Absolutely, Madam Chairman. On House Bill 94, Charter School Authorizations Amendments do pass as amended. Senator Brennan? Aye. Senator Olson has left an absentee vote of aye.
Okay.
Senator Rothfuss?
No.
Senator Scott?
Aye.
Chairwoman Schuler?
Aye.
4 aye, 1 no.
Okay. The bill is passed. It looks like Senator Brennan, Senator Olson, and Senator Scott, all 3 are on this. So do you guys want to do rock, paper, scissors? Decide who's going to take it on the floor? You'll figure it out? Okay, I'll leave it up to you guys to figure it out then. All right, we have one more bill. We're zipping through these today like nobody's business.
Don't jinx this one.
And I was just going to say, is the sponsor of this bill here? You were hiding in the back there, so. Again, people are hiding behind the pillars and hiding in the back, or I can't see them, so. Welcome, this is House Bill 148, University of Wyoming Governance Elected Trustees, sponsored by Representative Rodriguez-Williams. So welcome, and please introduce yourself, even though we know you, and tell us what you want us to know about this bill.
Good morning, Madam Chairman and members of the Education Committee. I'm Representative Rachel Rodriguez-Williams with House District 50, and I bring forward today to you House Bill 148, University of Wyoming Governance Elected Trustees, and ask for your favorable consideration. And I would be happy to walk you through the bill.
We'd love to hear you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Members of the committee, there's nothing that unifies Wyomingites like our university. Regardless of disagreements on politics, religion, or the litany of other things that divide us today, we all love our Wyoming Cowboys. This bill allows for residents of Wyoming from across the state to elect representation on the UW Board of Trustees. It increases representation of the people and provides an opportunity for citizens in Wyoming to have a stake in the leadership of our beloved university. This bill creates an opportunity for Wyoming to hold its land-grant university to a higher standard of representation, transparency, and accountability, so that every community can begin to place confidence in its decisions. Currently, the entirety of the Board of Trustees, 12 members, is appointed by the governor. This bill maintains the constitutional status quo and simply expands the board to allow for 7 elected members to have a seat too. This bill allows for ordinary citizens to run to represent their communities and serve the university at the same time. The bill provides accountability without upending the board's structure. It's a perfect way to maintain structural status quo while expanding the public access to the university's governing authorities. Madam Chairman and members of the committee, the meat and potatoes of this bill, although there's several pages, is on page 2, and I'll skim through it with you. Starting on line 13, the bill states the government of the university is vested in a board of 19 trustees. This is where we amend the bill, with 14 voting trustees and 5 ex officio non-voting trustees. 7 of the voting trustees shall be appointed by the governor, and the remaining 7 voting trustees shall be elected as provided by law. At least 1 voting trustee shall be appointed by the governor, and at least 1 voting trustee shall be elected from each appointment district as designated in Wyoming Statute 91218. And Madam Chairman, there are 7 districts throughout the state. So one seat per district. Not more than 75, moving on to page 3, % of the appointed trustees shall be registered in the same political party. The governor, the president of the university, the director of the Wyoming Community College Commission, the state superintendent of public instruction, and the president of the Associated Students of the university are ex officio trustees, having the right to speak but not to vote. A majority of the voting trustees of the board is a quorum. So, Madam Chair, this bill, the remainder of it basically places these new seats into law as, or into sections of the statutes where it needs to be inserted. So basically, conforming this new concept into various places throughout the remaining statutes. And Madam Chairman, I would further just elaborate that as members of the legislature know, according to the Constitution, Article 7, Section 17, under government of the university, the legislature shall provide by law for the management of the university. Not running a constitutional amendment here, not interested in that, just looking for further representation of the people across the state, and giving the opportunity for communities to provide elected positions, similar to the concept of our community colleges. And Madam Chairman, I would further state that in the Constitution, the Wyoming Constitution, the provision, or the constitutional provision, does not state the board must consist of only 7 members. It does read consisting of no less. This issue or constitutionality argument has got brought up, and I would tell you that I did consult with the good attorneys that help us draft our legislation, and so this information was considered, and furthermore, the legislature has expanded the ex officio members to include the governor and the president of ASUW through statute. There have been bills proposed over the years to expand membership to include other individuals. And Madam Chairman and members, I would stand for any questions.
Questions for Representative Rodriguez-Williams? Senator Scott, did you have one? Yes, go ahead.
Either that or Senator Ruffus, do you want?
Go ahead.
Madam Chairman, Article 7, Section 17. Legislature shall provide by law management of the university, its lands and other property by a board of trustees consisting of not less than 7 members. So clearly it can be more than 7 members. To be appointed by the governor with the advice and consent of the Senate, and then goes on to talk about the university president, et cetera, being ex officio. How is it possible to construe that language as permitting elected trustees? Madam Chairman, it seems to me this bill is on its face blatantly unconstitutional.
Representative?
I have reservations with the topic too. If this is a constitutional amendment, I might say, why? What's gone wrong over there that's so drastic that we need to change the governance this way? But it seems to me this one is on its face unconstitutional.
Representative Rodriguez Williams?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The good senator is entitled, to his opinion, obviously, and as we bring forth policy considerations, I would state that those conversations were had as this bill was being drafted. I did state my perception, and in the introduction, basically, of the bill, the argument did come up on our side of the chamber, and I would say was adequately defeated. And in regards to the good senator's question about why the policy change, or if I heard him correctly, need for a constitutional amendment, I think that this is clearly just a creative way to provide an additional option for our communities. And I would say, furthermore, the genesis of the bill, again, I represent several thousand people where I reside and in my district, and I would say there is a sense of disappointment in the management of the way that our university is reflected statewide. It does hinder, I would say, there is a sense of reluctance to send students to our only land-grant university because of some of the issues that are portrayed. I think there's some great changes that are taking place as well. So you got to give credit where credit is due. Not knocking the university as a whole, but I too believe that it would be great to have communities be representative through the elected process, similar to how our community colleges board of trustees are represented.
Other questions? Senator Rothfuss, did you have one?
Madam Chairman, thank you. Representative, just to be clear, you're not implying that any of our LSO attorneys thought that there was reasonable ground for this to be constitutional. You said that you spoke with all of them and had that conversation. I'm with Senator Scott, and honestly, I think this is a reasonable conversation to have, but for the fact that it's unconstitutional. I mean, I think the points made about representation and what would be an ideal system, that might have merit, but as I read it, and you can take out the consisting of not less than 7 members as you read the construction of it, because that's a clause that modifies it. It says, by a board of trustees to be appointed by the governor. By a board of trustees to be appointed by the governor. It seems unambiguous. So I guess I'm just going to ask you one more time how anyone can find that to be remotely ambiguous, and how anyone can find this legislation to be constitutional. I struggle, even if I liked it, I don't think I could get there. So what am I missing?
Representative?
Madam Chairman, honestly, I can't answer the good senator's question as to what he's missing. I can tell you that as the bill sponsor, I went through the proper channels and process. in communicating and drafting the bill with our good attorneys of the Legislative Service Office. And just like any other policy decision that we make in the legislative branch of government, each representative and each senator is entitled to their opinion. And so, again, I bring this bill forward to you and ask for your favorable consideration. I think, again, the meat and potatoes and the outline of how this would be structured, again, is simply within that paragraph on page 2 that I read.
Other questions? I just have a couple. So the idea is to have increased representation. Was it a constituent bill, first of all, or something that was brought to you, or just out of curiosity, how did it come about?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is not a constituent bill. I would say this is more of a district-wide bill. I can tell you that being a parent of a high school student and knowing many other parents in my district that provide input to their children as to where they should consider attending college. There's lots of conversations being had as to what experiences other students have had with the process of going through freshman orientation and their experiences at our land-grant university. And so we have small towns in Wyoming, very active citizens, and so I would say this is more of a district-driven bill.
Okay. And just a couple other quick questions. I know that you pointed out in the bill how this would be done by our county clerks. Would you anticipate that the voting then would take place when we do our school board elections, or how would that work?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So yeah, this would take place during a general election, and let's see if I can find the page exactly here. It does go into effect immediately upon completion of all the acts necessary for it to become law. And so again, there's seven districts in the state, so it would be 1 seat per a district as already placed in law.
Okay. And yeah, I just got one more, and I'll come back to you, Senator Rothfuss. Along those lines, when I first looked at this bill, the thing that really stuck out to me more than anything else was the fact that we would have 19 trustees. And I've been on a couple of boards that are large, and they're pretty unwieldy. And I thought, I don't know, what do you feel about 19 people being on a board trying to make a decision, trying to get a quorum even?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. Fair enough concern. I would push back a little bit and tell you that there are organizations out there that have larger amount of board members at the table. I think my interest solely lies with having adequate representation from each of these districts, trustees that are specifically voted in by the people and adequately represent the desire of the people.
Okay, thank you. Senator Rothfuss, I know you had a question.
Yeah, one question regarding the judicial districts, which I know is already in statute as the basis for selecting the appointments, but if you have an election, when you get to the point where it's an election, then you have to start adhering to equal representation, one person, one vote. It kind of goes into what we do for redistricting. And these judicial districts have significantly different populations, larger ones, 80,000, getting down to perhaps below 60,000. So you end up with inbuilt disparity between the size of the district, and therefore you start getting into the one person, one vote. I was wondering if that came up in any of the prior discussions, that from an equal representation standpoint, since this becomes elected, it is then probably unconstitutional from that standpoint as well. I didn't know if that was a discussion point that came up. What are your thoughts?
Representative?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Senator Ralphus, thank you for your question. I can tell you that has not come up in conversation, but I would direct you to the end of page 2, top of page 3, what has come up, and it does state, starting on line 23, not more than 75% of the appointed trustees shall be registered in the same political party. That, I would say, has come up more so than the question that you've asked, but I thank you for the question.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much for your testimony. We'll go ahead and open it up for public testimony at this time. So I see somebody from the governor's office is here. Welcome. Glad to have you, former senator. Yeah, the chief. I still think of you as the president, so I don't know if which of those sounds better, but welcome.
Madam Chairman, it's a pleasure to be here this morning. Drew Perkins, Chief of Staff for the Office of the Governor. Just here this morning on behalf of the Governor's Office, and particularly, we had our General Counsel look at this. You've already touched on the concern that the Governor has with this bill, and that is simply Article 7, Section 17. It is pretty clear. While the legislature has expanded the Board of Trustees with respect to ex officio members, of course, ex officio members generally are, particularly in the statute, in the Constitution and by the statute, are able to vote. Therefore, the management still vests in the 7 members of the Board of Trustees. And Senator Scott hit it exactly right, Madam Chairman. When you look at that, it's awfully clear that the management of the university, its lands, and other property by the Board of Trustees, and there's a comma, consisting of not less than 7 members, and there's another comma, to be appointed by the governor by and with the advice of the Senate. As you look at statutory and constitutional construction, this has been done as recently as 1996 in Tetiamat versus State. They look at these commas, and where these commas are placed are very important. But the fact that you have those 2 commas as second commas, particularly with consisting of not less than 7 members, comma, to be appointed by the governor with advice and consent of the Senate, means that relates to both antecedent clauses, both to the point that they're consisting of not less than 7 members, and that they're appointed by the governor with the advice and consent of the Senate. So regardless of the policy concerns, I mean, there are a number of policy concerns. You've hit on a number of those. We'll leave those to the legislature to debate the policy concerns, but you've already touched on it. On its face, this is just clearly an unconstitutional amendment, attempt to amend the Constitution through a statute versus having the members of Wyoming vote on that. So with that, I have no other comments. You've understood it well, and with that, I'll stand for questions.
Any questions for Chief Perkins? Okay, thank you very much for being here. Appreciate it. Does the State Department have anyone that would like to come forward? Okay, we'll just open it up for the public then. Please come forward. Anybody that wants to testify on this bill? Welcome, please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Brett Moline, Wyoming Farm Bureau Federation. It's kind of an awkward, have policy supporting the election of the University of Wyoming Board of Trustees. That's been longstanding policy. I've been with the organization for almost 19 years, and this policy predates me, so it is something that's been important to my members for quite a while. But we also have policy that we need to follow the Wyoming Constitution. So perhaps supporting this concept, but perhaps we need to take another way of look around it. I will say that should this bill go forward, if I understand the process right, if it would go to the governor's desk, that would be reviewed by the Attorney General, and then we would have a definitive answer, or perhaps more definitive answer if it was constitutional or not. So sitting firmly on the fence, but appreciating the concept, would like to see this bill go forward. So perhaps we need to make it go forward so we can have an Attorney General's opinion if it is or is not constitutional. I would take any questions the committee may have for me.
Any questions for Mr. Moline? Senator Scott?
Madam Chairman, looking at the substance of the idea of electing trustees as opposed to the mechanism for getting there, and I think the mechanism has to be a constitutional amendment. it seems to me that in my time in the legislature, the university has steadily improved and is doing a better job in educating undergraduates than it did, is doing a better job in doing research in some areas that are very important to the state of Wyoming. I'm thinking things like the study of how you get oil and gas out of existing reservoirs and things like that, but also done some notable successful research in the whole game and fish wildlife area. Why do your members feel that we need to make the radical change of electing the trustees when the organization is essentially being managed well and progressing?
Mr. Moline?
Chairwoman, Senator, this predates me, so this is going to be a little bit, a bit of a speculation on my part, but having people that are representing the area elected rather than just appointed is an important consideration for my members. We more appreciate having things elected rather than just appointed. As far as the quality of the university, it's a good university. It's the best one we got. I didn't mean to make it sound like that. It is a high-quality university. There is, from some of my members, there's a feel that perhaps the Ag College has been underfunded. You know, a few years ago, they took a larger percentage cut than any other college. There's some concerns that has that been rectified? In some ways, I think it has been, but in other ways, it perhaps has not been. So dancing firmly around your question, Senator Scott, but it's important to my members that people be elected rather than just appointed. I will point out, it's been under a previous administration, but the Board of Trustees violated the appointments to the Board of Trustees was swayed farther to one party than what was supposed to be. It was rectified by the next appointment. That's been several years ago, but having a vote of the people is important to my members.
Other questions? Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you for your testimony. Anyone else in the room who would like to testify on this bill? Welcome back. Please introduce yourself, even though you've been here once today.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chase Christensen, just a constituent of the state of Wyoming and concerned about the university. It wasn't introduced in when the bill was discussed originally, but I would like to point your attention to Section 3. And both paragraphs in Section 3 concern me a little bit, and notwithstanding the conversation with regard to constitutionality of this bill, I think it's important that if any bill is to advance, that it's of its best construct. And as Senator Roth has pointed out, Section 3, Paragraph A speaks to the way that these 7 elected members would become part of the board, and to get closer to one person, one vote. I think rather than sheer number of votes for the top 4 that are going to take those longer terms versus the shorter terms, that should look like a percentage of the total vote taken within their district rather than a number of votes for multiple reasons. And then paragraph B of Section 3, it concerns me with regard to, it seems to have as its intent to wipe out the previous appointments for those appointed positions, so that as of January 2026, we're going to have a new board of these 19 members entirely. And right now, the members of the Board of Trustees are spread across the dates with which their terms are up are 2025, 2027, and 2029. And I think paragraph B of this just flat makes all those at 2026. So it looks like it's just an attempt to wipe out the current board. Thank you.
Questions for Ms. Christensen? Okay, thank you for your testimony. Appreciate it. Anyone else that would like to testify? Please come forward. Welcome back.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Would it be all right if I read to you the advice that the good representative got from
Sure.
our staff on the constitutionality of this bill?
absolutely.
All right. So what was said by, so I won't use her name, but I see no issue with expanding the board membership. The constitutional provision provides the board must consist of no less than 7 members appointed by the governor with the consent of the Senate, plus the state superintendent and the president of UW as an ex officio member. The legislature expanded the ex officio members to include the governor and the president of ASUW through the statute, and there have been bills proposed over the years to expand the membership to include other individuals. The constitutional provision does not state that the board must consist of only 7 members. Instead, it reads, consisting of not less than. Of course, we can't predict what the court might say if such a bill were enacted and challenged, but on its face, I do not see a problem expanding those appointed by the governor. She goes on to say the draft will be reviewed by other attorneys as it goes through the process, and she did not receive any further comment from those other attorneys as it went through the process. So thank you.
Representative Andrew, was that from the Attorney General's office or LSO? I didn't catch where the,
That was from a good member of the LSO
LSO,
who
okay.
works on a lot of our education stuff. So thank you.
questions for Mr. Andrew? Or Representative Andrew, sorry. Okay, thank you, appreciate that. Anyone else in the room that would like to testify on this bill? No, okay. No one online, is there, Ashley?
No, Madam Chairman.
Okay, thank you. We will go ahead then and close down public testimony. What's your pleasure on this bill?
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
move we report the bill back to the Senate with the recommendation that it do not pass.
Second.
Okay, discussion on that amendment.
Madam Chairman.
Yes, go ahead.
A couple of the members were absent, but when you look at the specific language of Article 7, Section 17, legislature shall provide by law for management of the university's lands, other property by a board of trustees, comma, consisting of not less than 7 members, comma, to be appointed by the governor. And then goes on, vice and consent, and provides for the ex officio members. Madam Chairman, the governor's chief of staff went through the construction of that constitutional language, and I think it is very clear, both from the standpoint of just the plain English of it and the way things have been construed otherwise, that this bill as it stands before us is not and cannot be made constitutional. It has to be a constitutional amendment. And that's why I'm recommending the do not pass, which is more than just we didn't agree with it. That's a.
Okay. Senator Rothfuss.
Madam Chair, I'll just say I fully agree with Senator Scott.
Okay. Any other discussion on this amendment? Or, motion? Yes, Senator Brennan.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I do think that it is clear in the Constitution that there is supposed to be on the board at the university at least 7 members that are appointed by the governor. I think that is very clear. I don't think that it is addressed what happens and how the other, should more than 7 be added, how that looks. I don't think that that is clear in the Constitution.
Yes, Senator Rothfuss.
So I do think it's clear. And the second comma is what makes it clear. If the second comma isn't there, this is constitutional. With the second comma there, it isn't constitutional and it's unambiguous. The second comma, the presence of the 2 commas, means you can basically extract that clause as a modifier. So we take the clause away and it reads, by a board of trustees to be appointed by the governor. That is absolutely how it reads. There's no alternative interpretation. If you take the comma away, it would be fine, consisting of not less than 7 members to be appointed by the governor. right? At that point, you read it all together, and you could make the argument that not less than 7 of them would be appointed by the governor, but others could be elected. That comma is not an accident. And that's why it's unambiguous. There is no alternative interpretation.
Okay, other discussion? All right, let's vote on that motion. All those in favor of Senator Scott's motion? Oh, it is a roll call, you're exactly right. Roll call, Ashley. Yes, an aye is in support, yes, of a do not pass.
Okay, so an aye for do not pass.
Yes.
No for
Yeah.
pass.
Right,
Or against do not pass.
against the do not
Against do not
pass.
pass.
Yeah, so are we clear on that? Crystal clear? Okay. All right, Ashley, go ahead.
Madam Chairman, on House Bill 148, University of Wyoming Governance Elected Trustees do not pass. Senator Brennan?
No.
Senator Olson?
No.
Senator Rothfuss?
Aye.
Senator Scott?
Aye.
Chairwoman Schuler?
Aye.
3 aye, 2 no for a do not pass recommendation to the Senate.
Thank you, everyone, for your testimony and for all the good discussion today, and we'll see some of you back on Wednesday. Thanks so much. This meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.